Good evening and welcome, everyone. I'm Iris Iglarsh, president of the Northwest Suburban Chicago chapter of the National Organization for Women. And tonight I'm pleased to welcome Doctors Carolyn Marienau and Dr. Carolyn Torkelson, who will discuss their new book, Beyond Menopause, New Pathways to Holistic Health. Carolyn Torkelson, MD, is adjunct associate professor at the University of Minnesota, where she has worked at the Women's Health Clinic for the past 20 years, providing holistic, integrative women's health care. Carolyn Marienau, PhD, is professor emerita at DePaul University. She has dedicated her career to mentoring women in their educational and life pursuits, and speaks on various aspects of women's aging and ageism. So let's get started. Doctors?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen.
Okay.
Participants can. Okay, well, thank you so much, really, Iris, for this invitation. And we are pleased to be presenting on postmenopausal women and on holistic pathways to wellness. You might notice recently in the media, there's lots of talk about menopause and perimenopause. But what about all those years beyond menopause? Those postmenopausal years include 1/3 or more of your life. And women want to remain healthy, vital, and engaged in life. So what we really want to talk about tonight is how a whole system's integrative approach to well-being promotes and sustains vitality as we age. Now, we believe our book is a good platform. I'm just trying to do this. Our approach is to bridge the gap between conventional and holistic healing options. And Iris asked us right before we started here, tell us about that picture. And because this is a front picture of our book. So Catherine's going to give a little insight into that.
And this, we commissioned this cover by Kathleen Garness, who is a well-established artist, and we're happy to have her contribute in this way. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph of actually the last chapter of the book. It's because it talks about this tree. So a tree with deep intersecting roots, supple yet sturdy trunk, and vibrantly colored leaves on branches, reaching forward as new paths unfold. This image on our book cover symbolizes nourishment, growth, and movement toward what's yet to come. Imagine that this is your tree. It represents the durable foundation of health you've already built for yourself, and it invites you to nourish new growth and reach toward new possibilities to enhance your vitality.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes. So that gives you a little of an idea of the essence of our book. Now, just before we get started, you might wonder, why in the world would a physician and a college professor decide to write a book together about postmenopausal women and integrative holistic health? Well, first of all, it's really important that you know that Catherine and I have been longtime friends. We met in the late 60s in college, and we have had many wonderful adventures together. So we kind of said to ourselves, well, why not have another adventure, something that we're both passionate about? And really, both of us have a commitment to promoting the health and well-being of women as we age. So a book was born. And just to demonstrate the commitment that Catherine has to women as they age is when she retired from DePaul University. She didn't just, retire. She became a co-founder of a weekly podcast called Women Over 70, Aging Reimagined. And this features inspiring stories from women ages 70 to over 100 years old. And a couple weeks ago was their 200th episode. And so it's kind of inspired women like these that we want to talk about. And Catherine?
Well, friendship, I'm sure you all know, is very important to women's well-being. And we also have come to appreciate that environment, where you live, where you work, where you play, can also affect our well-being. So we want to tell you about the place where this book was conceived, and actually much of it was written. Now, just a little bit of backstory. In 1970, as college students, Carolyn and I spent the summer in Mexico doing independent study projects. And we happened upon and fell in love with an enchanting island on the East Coast called Isla Mujeres, Island of the Women. And Carolyn, the visionary, said, well, I'm going to have a place here someday. And sure enough, for the past 25 years, Isla's been my winter getaway. But it's become much more than a vacation retreat. It's provided an annual haven for us to spend large chunks of time working together right on this book. And this time together fortified us when we returned to our ordinary lives in Chicago and Minneapolis. And what became so exciting for us is that as I listened to Carolyn's stories about women's health experiences and their needs, and how she offered them other options beyond the conventional care, I heard remarkable parallels between holistic health and holistic education, which was where I was involved in. And it became clear that we approached health and learning from the same set of principles: attention to the whole person, deep care for the individual, and creating an environment that enables her to make her best choices. So in 2019, we thought we really can blend our voices, and we're going to make a distinct contribution to postmenopausal women. So let's keep in mind, as Carolyn noted, that most women have 30, even 50 years left to live after menopause. And so look at these beautiful, vibrant women who are on the other side of menopause. And they're part of a vast group of women, millions of us, who strive to live full and healthy lives. And they present with different kinds of needs, health needs, as they age, needs that greatly affect the quality of their lives. Now, unfortunately, these needs are often dismissed, neglected, overlooked in the conventional healthcare system. And so, as Carolyn said, we see our platform as a book for empowering women, no matter where they are on the health spectrum, to get the quality of healthcare they need to maintain their health and their well-being. So, Carol, I think this would be a good time to explain what we mean by integrative holistic care.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. I've been fortunate in my clinical practice to listen to the needs of women who are looking for integrative care. So let's take a moment and make sure that we're all on the same page when we talk about what is integrative holistic care. I think it's first helpful to think about it as a philosophy of living one's life that attends to the whole person, body, mind, and spirit through a healing approach. It combines conventional medicine with other traditions of health systems and healing modalities. It addresses the fundamentals of lifestyle and self-care, and it emphasizes a therapeutic relationship between patient and practitioner to create wellness. Notice, this is a wellness model and not a disease model of care. Within the framework of integrative care, there are many dimensions of wellness that need to be addressed. And oftentimes in conventional medicine, the physical component is often addressed, and other aspects of wellness are maybe forgotten or neglected. So, as a physician, my role is to really bridge that gap between conventional medicine and other healing options that interconnect all dimensions of wellness. Now, you might ask, well, how are we going to do this? How is this done? Well, in our book, what we did and beyond menopause, we divided the book into 3 parts. The first part is called Speaking Up for Yourself. The second part is to expand your options so you know about new pathways to holistic health. And the third is harmonizing your body, mind, and spirit. Now, Catherine's going to take a little time and talk about part 1 and what we mean by that.
Thanks, Carolyn. So part 1 really is about knowing yourself, speaking up for yourself, establishing effective relationships with your providers. And I'm not going to focus on chapter 2, which is called Priming Your Advocacy Voice. And for reasons noted, we postmenopausal women need to be strong advocates for our healthcare because no one else is going to do it for us. And we, Carolyn and I, believe that your self-advocacy voice is key to building pathways for living in a holistic way. Yeah, we acknowledge it's not always easy to self-advocate in the medical situations, which can be unfamiliar and intimidating. And so you might need to prime your voice, your self-advocacy voice, when making choices and decisions about your health care. So what's involved? Well, one of the book's distinctions is that we emphasize the importance of knowing yourself as fully as possible. And that can be complex matter, especially because in conventional medical settings, your emotions and intuition might not be taken into account. Yet we know that emotion and intuition are integral to how people, women, make decisions. And so we encourage you, all of us, to pay attention to actually 4 things. First is to acknowledge your emotions. Emotions live in our bodies, and they greatly influence how we think and actions that we take. So we want to be as aware as possible of what emotions we're holding, and claim them and make them part of the conversation because they're essential to your well-being. The second is to actually trust your intuition, because your intuition is what gives you clues and cues about how to interpret what's going on. What is your sense of what's actually happening here? It's kind of a 6th sense that can guide you beyond what your mind knows or thinks it knows. And then certainly to use your reasoning skills to process and analyze information. And then 4th is ways of knowing, because we all have different ways of knowing and information that we rely on when we're making our decisions. And so there's some possibilities. In some situations, think about your voice. It might actually be passive, silent, because you're placing your trust almost entirely on what the medical expert is telling you to figure out what's going on and what to do about it. And sometimes that's called for, because you're not in a situation to be able to know much about what's actually happening at that moment. But when you're ready to be more involved in making choices and decisions, then you might have actually 2 different kinds of voices. And one is subjective, and that means that you make your decisions influenced more by people who are in your inner circle, people you trust. And it's on what others have chosen to do for themselves, what they advise you to do. It could be your mother, sister, best friend. There's another way of knowing, of exercising your advocacy voice, and that is here on the slide as active, but I think it's really, your voice is constructive, because you're trusting yourself to be the central player, and you're asking probing questions, and you're seeking information from a variety of sources. You're consulting with experts, not just one, but several. You're reflecting. So you're really involved in constructing the whole picture of your health situation. And the important thing here is just the important point we want to make is to be aware that you have a voice. How are you using it? Are you using it effectively? Are you using it intentionally and with confidence? Or, as many of us, do you need some help? Do you need some support in this area? So part 1 of the book sets the stage for knowing yourself from a holistic perspective. And we think it's really to help you live as vitally as possible on the day-to-day. And we think you'll be better prepared to deal with the health crisis should it arrive. So as advocates for ourselves and for other women, we need to push the boundaries of the medical system, and we need to expand options for wellness. And Carolyn will be talking about part 2 of the book, which is about, well, what are those boundaries and how can we push those forward, and what are the options that we can consider. But before we do that, let's just take a moment and pause and talk, see if there's anything that we have talked about so far that's getting your attention, questions you might have, your own experiences with using your voice.
I have a question. When you introduced this section, you were talking about prime your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you explained that somewhat, but I'm just wondering, I never really heard the term prime your voice. And I'm just wondering why you selected that verb.
Well, I'm sure that was me. Because it's about getting ready, about energizing yourself and your voice to speak with some confidence, with that you're part of it. And so I come from the farm. We prime the pump. We're priming our voices to get them ready.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions before we move on? You can raise your hand or something.
Or they can put it in the chat if they don't
Okay.
feel like
In the
talking.
chat. Yeah.
You might.
We're curious whether this notion of being a self-advocate and using your voice resonates with people.
Mm-hmm.
Is it how you already approach the health in the health system? And here's Janice who says, I love the conversation. Yes, I am a self-advocate. Great.
Great. Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, well, why don't we move on? And Carolyn,
Yeah, we can move on.
bring
Great.
us into part 2.
Okay. Well, in the second part of the book, we expanding your options. Let's see. We have highlighted 8 health conditions that are common in postmenopausal women and are particularly amenable to integrative care. We illustrate healing approaches through stories of women that I have seen over the years in my practice. So within the book itself, there are vignettes, there's stories of women's journeys through integrative medicine. Now, the 8 different conditions are the menopause transition, sexual health, sleep, anxiety, fatigue, weight concerns, bone health, and brain health. Now you wonder, why in the world did I choose these? And the reason for that is that over my 30 years of practice, I have heard these concerns repeatedly. And women come to me often frustrated, saying that they can't find the kind of comprehensive holistic care that they want and the kind of care that they really think they need. So what we have done is in each chapter, we start with a definition of the condition, with an introduction of the condition, and then look at how to bridge the gap between conventional medicine and other options. For example, in the chapter on anxiety, we expand beyond medication and even therapy, and we look at other integrative strategies, including meditation, mindfulness, yoga, exercise, forest bathing, sound therapy, and even looking at a different health system like homeopathy. So all these are strategies to quiet the mind-body connection. We think it's important to provide an overview of healing options. So when you look to the left side of the PowerPoint, we have listed a number of different healing systems. These are things that we touch on in the book. What is traditional medicine, functional medicine, Ayurvedic, naturopathic, homeopathic, traditional healers, so that you walk away with a better understanding of when somebody mentions health systems, what does that really mean? Then on the right side, you'll see healing options. Many of these options that we've listed here, you might have already engaged in, but it's something to look at and consider and figure out what resonates with you or what might be vital for you in order to begin to improve your well-being. And it varies from one woman to the next. Now, I just want to take a little additional time and talk about a chapter on fatigue, and go into a little bit more depth of what a chapter would look like, or what we're trying to get at in the book. Now, when I say the word fatigue, I'm not talking about fatigue that is associated with chemotherapy or other kind of chronic health conditions. I'm talking about that run-of-the-mill, gosh, I just don't have the energy like I used to. I'm just not myself. I feel a little more tired than I ever had before. And you might realize, you might know from experience, or you go into your doctor and you say, you know, I'm a little fatigued. And they look at you and they go, oh, well, you know, all your labs are normal. You look pretty good for your age. Maybe you're a little depressed. Maybe you want to try an antidepressant. And, you know, some of the times that is a part of the solution. But often the answer is much deeper than that. And you need to look at root causes of the condition. So when I see a woman that represents with fatigue, there are two kind of components that I really want to consider. And sometimes that aren't talked about a lot. And that is the first thing we're going to look at. The two components are digestion. How well does your gut work? The other one is, what is your metabolism? And you really kind of have to figure out, you have to work with both these components in order to begin to restore your health. And when I see a woman with fatigue, typically what I start with is that digestive health, your nutrition. How well does your gut work? So one way that I can kind of explain this to you is to tell you a story that's in the book. I'm going to read it to you. This is about a woman who came into my office, Tracy, who is 60 years old. She comes into me complaining about fatigue and weight gain. Tracy runs a successful business in the cities, but also lives on a hobby farm in the country. She has to drive back and forth a couple times a week and admits to stress and not taking the best care of herself. She wanted to know, what in the world can I do to feel better? So we discussed a whole list of interventions, including dietary changes, intermittent fasting, food elimination, supplements. And so when she returned in 2 months, I was really eager to see if she felt better. Well, Tracy came bouncing back in the room saying she felt great. And I thought to myself, my goodness, what did Tracy do that she feels so much better? And she looked at me and said, oh, Dr. Torkelson, I did the one thing you told me to do. I ate mindfully. I sat down every morning for breakfast with my husband. And by taking the time to eat and talk with him, I rediscovered that I really liked him. Connected with good conversation, something we hadn't done in years. Also, when I went to the store to work during the week, I started having lunch with my employees. We closed the shop for half an hour and sat together to eat and talk. I realized how lucky I was to have such good people working with me. Everyone felt more relaxed and less stressed. Wow, she said, the power of mindful eating has changed my life. Well, I think this Tracy story illustrates many things. But it also illustrates why the gut, why the digestive system is considered the second brain. You know, the gut, this whole stomach and gut system, digestive system, is just not a system for elimination. It's not just a plumbing system. It's much more than that. The gut has a nervous system that communicates and talks. It actually talks with the brain through neurotransmitters stored in the gut. There's also a vast microbiome, or a ecosystem of trillions of bacteria that live in the gut. And this ecosystem needs to be nourished, and it needs to be balanced in order for you to optimize your health. So I think of how important, I think we lose sight of this GI system that sits within our body, and we don't think of it as an organ. And I want you to start giving it a little bit more credit. So you might say to yourself, how do we nourish the gut? Well, sometimes it can be fairly simple, like who, what, where, and when, and how do we eat? Our culture has relegated to eating often to a multitask. Many of us eat in front of our computer, in the car, when we're walking, in front of the refrigerator. And you know, this is not mindful eating, and it's not good for digestion. Rather, we need to sit down, we need to smell our food to get the digestive enzymes going. We need to chew our food to get the digestive enzymes. And we need to enjoy our food in a calm environment. So who, what, when, and where really makes a difference. And Tracy's story really illuminates that with her mindful eating. So sometimes improving your digestion can be quite complex. And you need to try elimination diets, removing sugars, alcohol, dairy, gluten, to be able to identify, are there food triggers? Are there food intolerances that is making my digestive system not work so well? You also need to have a whole plant-based diet that is nutrient dense, to give you the kinds of minerals and vitamins that you need. Now, there are times you also need supplements. You need adequate fiber, prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes. And often women, as they age, do not drink enough fluids. So getting hydrated is an important part of the puzzle. Then you say, well, okay, well, what about my metabolism? How do I balance that? Pre-diabetes and diabetes is a big issue for many aging women. And managing your blood sugar and insulin levels are really important if you're going to manage inflammation. And again, this is done with a plant-based diet that is nutrient dense. Also, weight management and some kind of daily movement helps to regulate that blood sugar. The other component of the metabolism is to keep your stress hormones balanced. Hormones like cortisol. Look at this HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is your fight and flight response. And when you're stressed, it releases cortisol. Sometimes that's good, but oftentimes if that cortisol is dysregulated, or if we have chronic high cortisol levels, it causes fatigue. It causes poor sleep, irritability, anxiety, and depression. So learning how to dampen down that fight and flight response, dampen down that sympathetic stress response through mindful meditation, yoga, breath work, even getting a good night's sleep or doing other restorative practices is so it really makes a difference. You might say to yourself, oh, hold on here, this is too much. I can't do this on my own. And you might need to seek out a more knowledgeable practitioner, like a functional medicine practitioner. This is a clinician whose approach to health and healing focuses really on how illness occurs and restores health by addressing the root cause of disease. What they do in a consultation is that they take a very thorough history and a thorough intake of lifestyle. They do alternative testing. They may do stool analysis, hormone testing, genetic testing, food sensitivities. They may even look at heavy metals, things that could be causing neurological changes. With all those labs and all that intake, they analyze that and come up with a plan. So you can have a step-by-step approach as to how to really maximize your health. Here is just an example of a functional medicine wellness model. And look what's right in the middle. It's nutrition. Nutrition will help gut health and it'll help blood sugar balance, which maximizes all the other functioning that is happening in your body. So that's a very vital, essential place to start. I do want to mention, though, another approach to consider, because we've talked a lot about physical components, is to consider the practice of energy medicine that activates the body's subtle energy systems to remove blocks. Now, I can't think of a better example than acupuncture. Acupuncture actually breaks through some of these blocks, and it stimulates our own body's inherent ability to heal itself. And isn't that what we really want to do? Is figure out how our body can really heal itself and trigger those kinds of trigger kind of an energetic flow that can work towards wellness. Now you can use different kind of modalities like healing touch, Reiki, Qigong, Tai Chi. All these are different kinds of ways that our body learns to heal on its own. So I want Catherine to move a little bit into more practical aspects.
Well, truth be told, the second part of the book, as you can probably tell, is really that's Carolyn's expertise, and I became the layperson. I was the layperson. I was reading and talking with her and developing those chapters really from more of a student or a layperson perspective, and I was learning a lot about my body-mind connections. And the wellness care model that Carolyn just presented, I find really helpful because it helps me organize so much detail. There's a lot of detail in the book that you can sort through, but then what? How do you make meaning of it? So I think the wellness model is very helpful for that. You can see the larger system for wellness. And I especially connect with the energy medicines because over the years I've used several of them, still do. Acupuncture for sure, aromatherapy, Tai Chi, healing touch, Reiki. And just a year ago, I was in a rather remote village in the mountains in Jamaica, and I was walking through the forest and some sacred places, and I felt tremendous sense of peace and well-being. Then I come back to find out that, well, there's such a thing as forest bathing. So that is something that I feel like I've done without guidance, and now I really want to invest more in that because it can be so powerful. The pillars of health is another way of organizing, looking at what we've been talking about. And from my own experience, if you see connection and community, the connection with family, friends, nature, building community has always been a priority for me. And so I think I understand. I mean, I know how important it is. Working on the book, though, has helped me understand why it's so important for my mental and physical well-being. I also, emotional well-being, I've always been a student of human development. I've taught it. I invest a lot in my own personal development. So that usually gets a fair amount of attention. Then restoration and rest, well, menopause and postmenopause threw that one into a chaos. So I've had to give a lot more attention to sleep and to reducing stress and how to manage that. Exercise and movement is, well, Carolyn can't wait to get up and do that. I have to really force myself to do exercise and movement. So that's an area that I'm focusing on now. And then nutrition and digestion. I've sort of always known about, well, what are the good foods to eat and the foods to avoid, but I didn't quite understand that food is medicine. Mm-hmm. And so that's a new mindset that I'm still working on in terms of nutrition and digestion. But so Tracy and Carolyn started with nutrition and digestion, and you could see how it improved her sense of connection with her husband and her employees, and her emotional well-being was greatly enhanced, and she felt more rested, and so that all worked together. And so I think the point is that you kind of, for you, where do you want to start? Doesn't really matter. Just start with what's really on your mind right now, and then you'll see that all these other things, it's so interconnected that if you attend to nutrition and digestion, other aspects of health will be affected positively as well. So I think we're going to pause again because we've covered a lot.
Questions, conversation, anything come up?
I have a question. Excuse my ignorance, but what is a forest bath?
Forest bathing.
Forest bathing. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, forest bathing is an opportunity to go in with a guide, typically, and into a forest or woods or an outside setting, and go through kind of a ritual of meditation, of thought, of openness, and just of reflection to see how nature can heal.
Okay.
And it is simply a nature healing strategy. Now, there are a number of books written about forest bathing, and they will say, well, there's certificates in guiding people through a forest bathing experience, which is wonderful. However, you can look at situations like Catherine just said in Jamaica, where she just found nature in a place and it inspired her, it relaxed her, it comforted her, it brought her to a place of healing. And many of us, when we have those natural experiences, we know what that's like. And our job sometimes is to seek those out. So does that answer, Iris?
Yes, that's interesting. I also noticed that Janice Weiner in the chat said she recently attended a retreat with sound baths and meditation and movement. I can see the difference after meditating several days per week. I am calmer.
Absolutely. Sound bathing or sound baths have really become, what should I say? More available, more accessible, more acceptable, because they are, that vibration of sound is incredibly relaxing for many people. There are sound bowls that people use to kind of create that vibration that gets them into a state of relaxation. And it's beautiful. I was at a retreat a couple years ago in Spain, and it was really my first experience with sound baths. And we did it. We all laid down on a mat right before we went to bed. And that sound therapy just took me into bed and into sleep in a way that I had never really slept before. It's a wonderful experience and what should I say? A practice.
Mhm. Amy, you looks like you have a question.
Yeah. Oh, darn it. What advice would you give to those who are time challenged through work because of work? If being realistic, what would you say? You said you can start with one thing or whatever. What are like, if you gave me just a couple ideas, I think that would be really interesting. Thank you.
And, some of these things, let me just think about it. One thing I think about is, it works for some people, is just to have, instead of a chair, to have a bouncing ball that you can sit on and get some more movement. You just, rather than sitting in a hard chair in one position, a ball can be used for some movement. That's easy. It's accessible. Of course, people are using standing tables. We know that's very acceptable. The other thing that I would suggest is schedule an appointment with somebody who can do something for you for relaxing. So you don't have to depend on yourself to find the time to relax. Have a time where you can see somebody who does healing touch or Reiki or a massage, and just allot for that time and receive it. So that's a way that you can kind of relax without having to say, okay, now I'm supposed to relax because I have 10 minutes. So allotting that time. Catherine, do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I was also thinking that I certainly can relate to a hectic work schedule. And I think breath work is something that can be built into any kind of schedule. And there was a time in my life that was pretty full of stress, and we don't have hypnosis on our list, but I did see a hypnotist. And one of the things that I took away from that was different kinds of breathing, breath work that I still use now if I feel myself getting a little too frenzied because too many good things are happening and I start to feel overwhelmed, or if I wake up in the middle of the night, it's hard to go back to sleep. I practice that breath work, and I find that to be very helpful. So I think it's also to just, get up and move, just get up and walk around for 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Yeah, so
These are all really good suggestions. Thank you.
And hydration is really important. It's simple to do always, and it's become pretty integrated into our lives, but don't forget that we're drinking a lot of coffee and tea and other things. Make sure you're hydrating yourself. Try and do one thing, like adding one vegetable to your meal a week. Make it so simple. You're taking a bag of carrots, a bag of just choose one thing that you can add. But I love the breathwork idea. You can always just sit back and take some slow, deep breaths.
Can I add one more suggestion? I'm sorry to interrupt, but hydration, I have become so much better at drinking water because I drank a lot of crappy stuff. And the way I did it is, first of all, I splurge on the water I like. I get really high quality water now that I love. And I got one of those mini coolers because I like my water cold, but also I even get the hot beverage. It feels like a treat now, as opposed to, I got to drink some water. And yes, it costs some money, but you know what, compared to drinking sodas and whatever, it's well worth it. I just wanted to suggest for those of us who do have problems with it, a cooler can really help.
Yeah, great idea.
And if we think that because we're drinking more water, then we're going to have to go to the bathroom more often, which is probably true. But it's another way of, I'm getting a bit more exercise. So it's part of movement.
And
Well,
I can't go ahead. Go ahead, Melinda. You're on mute.
What do you think about probiotics, like a line?
I think probiotics can be a part of a solution if somebody has a lot of digestive issues. I think the question really always comes, well, what probiotic is the best probiotic? Do I do lactobacillus, bifidobacteria? Which one do I use? But I think in general, probiotics are very valuable, essential parts of helping the microbiome be healthy.
And I'm going to grab something that I find, I've already been through menopause. I had surgical menopause.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to grab it because I can't remember the name of it. Did you mention it all about surgical menopause? I missed the first few minutes.
Yeah, no, we did not specifically about surgical menopause. It is one of our chapters, not surgical menopause, but the menopause transition. And we do briefly comment on surgical menopause. But what were you going to show?
So, I have dryness of the vaginal area. I don't know if that's part of your conversation on menopause.
Oh, it's part of our sexual chapter.
Sexual
So
health.
is that something you want to talk about?
Sure, if that's if everybody feels comfortable with that, yeah, absolutely.
So,
In fact, if you're interested, Melinda, I'll give a call out for Catherine's podcast on December 6th.
oh,
It's called A Deep, Catherine.
It's a deep talk forum with women over 70 aging reimagined. And the topic is sex and sexuality after 70.
oh, great.
And-
So how would I come to this podcast?
If you go to www.womenover70.com and go to non-member registration, non-member event registration.
Okay.
It's going to be a wonderful conversation. Carolyn will be one of the panelists representing a lot of the physical part, and Sally Strosaw is a psychologist, and she will be talking about the psychological aspects of sexual health. So it's going to be very powerful.
That sounds great. I'm a therapist. Now that I'm in my 70s, I'm really turning into a part-time therapist. And I've been so amazed how many times I've had a client who's coming for emotional reasons that she doesn't quite understand. And it turns out she's starting menopause.
Mm.
Absolutely.
And I send her off to the doctor and to get started. But so I think that's interesting that women don't even recognize when they're starting menopause. For some reason, we never talk about it. But so dry vaginal, I find estradiol. I get it from Simply Pure. Does wonders. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, absolutely. So, as we know, when we go through menopause, our ovaries are not working like they did before. So our estrogen.
Right, or we don't have ovaries.
Or we don't have ovaries.
Yeah.
So there's a limited amount of estrogen in your body, and estradiol in particular is what comes from the ovaries. And if you don't have any, you don't have any estradiol. So the effect of that is that your vaginal area, along with other areas of the body, become the blood supply is not bringing estrogen to those areas, so they get dry, atrophic, and intercourse often becomes painful. So in order to improve that, we start with lubrication or with estrogen therapy. So you using estradiol on the vaginal area is going to help for to prevent urinary tract infections, permit vaginal stimulation, or just in general improve discomfort that you might have if your skin in the vulvar area is really dry. So absolutely, estradiol is an effective estrogen replacement in a way.
So what did you mean by vaginal stimulation?
So for a lot of people, when they're talking about vaginal, so let's talk about orgasms. So if you want to have an orgasm as you age, a lot of the blood flow to that clitoral area has been diminished. So what you need to do is you need to use, some women need to use estrogen on that clitoral area and vaginal area so that stimulation and orgasm can come easier. Does that make sense?
Well, that makes a lot of sense because they say that there is no aphrodisiac for women. But I find estradiol actually is a wonderful help.
A lot of women don't realize that you start with estrogen, and it can be life-changing for some women who want a successful a sexual experience, either because either with intercourse, outer course, or orgasm. So
Talk about the use it or lose it, Carolyn.
Oh yeah, and then that's another. And there's a lot of reasons that we want women to be sexually active, and one of those is the more you use it, the less you use it, the more you lose it. So whether that's with a partner, whether that's with yourself, whether that's your own self-stimulation, it's just a part of well-being. And that's why.
What is it that you lose?
Lose by not being sexually active?
Yeah, I just didn't understand what that meant.
Okay, so I mean, we know that people who are sexually active, that improves their mental and physical well-being. They feel better. It improves relationships with your partner. It releases endorphins that help to improve sleep, decrease stress. So does that?
But you're not actually losing anything though, right?
Oh, you mean are you losing?
You're losing, yeah, so that was probably, what I learned the hard way, the difficult way was, if you're not sexually active for a good long time and are not using any kind of replacement, when you do get around to having a sexual experience, it can be god awful painful. So that's if you're interested in the intercourse part of things. But what we're talking about is also keeping that part of our bodies healthy and alive and vital, whether we have a partner or not, whether we're having intercourse or not, because it is part of our whole health system.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've said too much.
No, I understand. So can I also ask another question? So having difficulty with bladder control, how does that fit into menopause?
Well, a number of things change as we go through menopause with the loss of hormone and with the onset of aging. Okay, some things happen. Our pelvic floor muscles aren't as strong as they have typically been. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't improve those pelvic floor muscles with physical therapy. And with incontinence, whether it's stress or urge, that's the first thing that we do, is we really get to a urogyne pelvic floor person who can work on improving your muscles, okay? And things like yoga, certain yoga positions will help with your pelvic floor. The other component is that just with aging, your bladder, some of its capacity to stretch doesn't work quite as well. And that's why women, their detrusor muscles will not be working, they will spasm more quickly, and that gives you the sense that you need to go urgently. Also, your bladder is innervated with a nervous system. And if there's any kind of underlying health condition, inflammatory responses, diabetes, Parkinson's, MS, that alters your nervous system that innervates the bladder and it creates more bladder problems. So just a little overview.
Oh, no, this is great. This is great because this is the kind of stuff that we just hear about in a very general way.
Yes.
And
Okay,
it's good to understand it. So when did they start having a physical therapist for bladder control? And what exactly does that mean?
Well, I think that if you had significant stress, if you were one saying, it's a problem for me. I used to go, I'm getting up 3 times at night, 4 times at night. I can barely make it into my driveway because I'm going to leak by the time I get to the bathroom. Or I have to wear a pad all the time because I'm leaking. Oh, ask your primary care doc for a referral to physical therapy. This is something that is covered by your insurance. Or if you just said, I think I'm changing. It's not the same as it was before. You can get a referral to physical therapy.
I have heard about that. I don't have those problems, but I do find that if I haven't taken the estradiol as much as I should,
Yes.
I find it shows up in my bladder weakness.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, it can, because remember, you're plumping up all those tissues around the urethra, and your urethra sits right in the midst, right in the midst of that vulvar area. So as you plump that up, then you might also have some benefit on urinary tract infections, or the prevention of that, and other bladder problems. So yeah, for you, it's worked really well. And you're probably, if you're getting it over the counter, you're getting a low dose of estradiol.
No, it's a prescription.
Okay.
From Simply Pure.
Oh, sure. I see.
Which actually is a very reasonable way to buy it. Before then, I would go to CVS with a prescription that wasn't, pardon?
Absolutely. And we mentioned that in the book, that getting it through a compounding pharmacy is often less expensive than getting your estrace, which costs $100 or $200 for a tube, sometimes not paid for by insurance.
Right. Insurance doesn't pay for it. And I think it's between $200 and $300 these days.
It's outrageous.
Whereas this cost me $50.
That's right. You got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, for the last few minutes of our presentation, feel free to unmute yourself. Any comments, any concerns, any questions, any ideas, suggestions?
And why don't we let go of the slides so people
That's a great idea.
Okay.
If I could, I just want to very briefly mention the last part of the book.
Oh,
Because
sorry.
that's fine. Because it's really about harmonizing body, mind, and spirit. And so we're paying attention to spirit. And we do that by focusing on four aspects of it. And it all has to do with nurturing. And it's nurturing our spirituality, whatever that means to you. It's, however you feed your spirit. And we talk about nurturing self-compassion, because we really are at that phase in life where we need to practice self-kindness and self-care as we navigate, all the complexities of life. We talk about nurturing loss, because at this phase in life, it's likely that we are encountering loss of people, of animals, of place. And so we talk about, how to reconstruct a meaningful life and reclaim vitality. And then we also talk about purpose, which, it takes different forms for different people, but we really we emphasize connection again, that with other people, with nature, with animals, something that makes us feel like we're really part of a larger whole. So I wanted to just let you know that we're kind of in part 3, we're back to the more holistic, bringing in the spirit aspect.
I think that's so great that you talk about nurturing purpose and nurturing loss, because loss comes in so many forms as we age, doesn't it?
It does.
And nurturing purpose, I've gone from full-time to part-time to wondering how long I'll be part-time. And, that wasn't something I've had to consider for a while. The purpose, right?
Right. Yes.
Yes. So,
And, it's true. A lot of people can find purpose in their grandchildren and their children, but it also seems a little bit like avoiding the concept of purpose, because I think sometimes the boundaries get crossed into the younger generation to assure one's purpose, and not that it's done on purpose.
no, I think so. One of the goals too of our book is, even though we really wanted to give voice to the postmenopausal woman, because we have so much time left to live and we want to live it purposefully. And but the book is really to engage women. We really want a movement to start to help women feel visible as they age. And
I wonder if that's really possible, other than to other women, right? Than to other women our age.
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge some of the comments people made in the chat. Judith said that men can also benefit from some of this as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sherry indicated that the Chicago Botanic Garden is a great place to experience nature, and it's convenient for people in the Chicago area. And I've been there many times. I find it extremely relaxing just to sit and listen to nature, basically. Janice Weiner suggested that you can even ask Alexa to play Tibetan singing bowls.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And Sherry said she tries to walk in the Chicago Botanic Garden every Sunday, but she's a little concerned what's going to happen with the weather getting bad today. The last couple of days have not been the greatest in Chicago, considering earlier November we had 7-degree temperatures, but now it's like back in the 30s and 25 right now. But
I highly recommend the Art Institute.
That's another good one. Yeah, that's another good suggestion. And a couple of other comments. Eleanor said it was a very opportune topic. With the pandemic, I think more and more people, men, women, and young adults, are more aware the whole mind and body experience. People are taking a more holistic health, well-being approach to life. It's not just the physical side, but the mental and the spiritual, which are points that I think you've made very strongly made during your presentation. And Susan said, speaking of the subject you touched on, very important for everyday life. Thank you for talking about them. And Michelle, thanks you for the presentation. Any other comments or questions?
I think I tuned in kind of late. I was just wondering, what's the name of the book and where is the book available?
Okay.
Are you seeing my slides moving quickly? I'm there almost. Beyond Menopause, New Pathways to Holistic Health. You can buy it on Amazon. You can go to Rutledge Press or rutledge.com. And the information is just right there on the bottom of the slide.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I can send that link to all the participants.
Great, thank
So they
you.
get that, as well as Catherine's podcast.
Yes.
I can send the link to that too, to all participants.
Susan, I can't wait for my book to get here. Thank you,
Yeah.
Susan.
Right. Right.
Oh.
Good. Thank you all.
Okay, any more, looks like there's a couple more messages down here. Oh, can't wait for the book to get here. Yeah, I've also ordered the book and I haven't received it yet. And I'm looking forward to it even more now since I've heard the presentation. And before I close out, unless there's any other comments or questions, I just wanted to mention to our chapter members that we won't be having a chapter meeting in December. Traditionally, in the month of December, we don't have a meeting, but our next chapter meeting will be held in January, and I'll be sending an announcement about the January meeting soon. So at this point, I'd like to thank all participants in Illinois Now for joining us tonight. And of course, I especially want to thank Catherine Marienau and Carolyn Torkelson for sharing their time and energy with us. I can't wait for my book to come either. I've been inspired by the valuable information that you've shared with us about creating our own path to wellness. And I think you did it in a way where you touched on complicated topics, but in a way that's very easy to understand. And I found that very helpful. And I hope everybody is able to remain healthy and engaged for many years to come.
Thank you
So
so much.
thank you for being here. And Amy, you can stop the recording. And if anybody wants to stay to chat, we can just chat after the recording's turned off.